with government's blind pursuit of misguided, racially segregated criteria. And yet, during last week's debate here, the point became very clear that many municipalities and one province are navigating that space with tremendous success. These are Democratic Alliance-led governments, where people who are the beneficiaries of the projects are at the heart of each build. In ANC governments, it is usually the people who are the beneficiaries of the tenders that are prioritized. I'd like to acknowledge today the member of the provincial legislature, Honorable Nico de Jager, who I mentioned in last week's speech. In his previous role as an MMC in Johannesburg, he oversaw numerous key and successful projects being implemented. Today, he is here as a special delegate from Gauteng. But honestly, members, even the most dedicated Marxists amongst us will admit that the cost of setting up engineering entities across the provinces and metros is simply not affordable. Consider a Caterpillar AP 655 asphalt paver, retailing at about 6 million rand each. It may seem like a small amount to those that are used to counting their Basasa packets, but to spend that kind of money on a machine that will only be needed to work a few days a month and stand idle for the rest shows a distinct lack of priorities. There is not enough money in our current budget to do the things that we already have in our departmental projects and programs. This is why we, the Democratic Alliance, has been pushing for a reassessment of every single line item in every department in government. We can no longer afford some of the nice-to-have projects and needless expenses. It makes no sense to buy a new frame every time the president announces a new finance minister. Just replace the picture. Print it on the office desk jet. Don't worry if it fades quickly. There'll be a new minister. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Just replace the picture. Print it on the office desk check, and don't worry if it fades quickly. There'll be a new minister pretty soon anyway. Honourable members, you may accuse me of being a little bit silly in today's speech. It is, after all, the silly season coming up. Perhaps that's why we are having this debate. It simply is the silliest proposal yet to be discussed in this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Ryder. We continue with the debate, and we are calling on the Honourable Makamu from Limpopo, MEC, to continue with the debate.
Thank you, Program Director, the Deputy Chair of the NCOP, the Chairperson of the NCOP, House Chairpersons, Chief Whip of the NCOP, Honorable Members, Permanent Delegates and Special Delegates, Portfolio Committee, on COCTA, Select Committee, other parliamentary oversight, fellow MECs who are here, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. We meet in the backdrop of the launch of this year's 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, which runs from the 25th of November to 10 December annually, to highlight the scourge of gender-based violence and femicides affecting women and children in our country. This year's theme for the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence is, I quote, socio-economic rights and empowerment to build women's resilience against gender-based violence and femicide. Connect, collaborate, and contract. According to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, one of the objects of local government is to ensure the provision of services to its communities in a sustainable manner. In the execution of this mandate, municipalities employ both internal and external capacity to deliver to their communities. Much of the infrastructure projects, such as roads, water, electricity, are outsourced to external service providers. Procurement of goods and services takes place within an ambit of the Constitution and mirrors of legislation. Section 217 of the Constitution articulates as follows on procurement. When an organ of the state in the national, provincial, or local sphere of government, or any other institution identified in the national legislation, contracts for goods and services, it must do so in accordance with a system which is fair, equitable, transparent, competitive, and cost-effective. Contracts for goods and services by national, provincial, or local government, or any other institution of the state, takes place within the constitutional prescripts and national legislation as envisaged by the Constitution. The modality of service delivery has been riddled with challenges like poor workmanship and downright corruption, to the point of general outcry for the abolishment of tenders and the insourcing of all government services. You might have heard, Honorable, that whoever is opposing tendering system is not complaining about that it's not working. They only complain about corruption that accompanies it. Contrary to the noble idea of contracting for goods and services, the practice of tenders becomes synonymous with acts of bribery, financial kickbacks, which are serious forms of corruption. As we all know, the current democratic dispensation is seized with the mammoth task of rooting out corruption wherever it rears its head. In this regard, the corruption-fighting agencies such as the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, otherwise known as the Hawks, as is better known, and the NPA are under new leadership. Their work is gaining public visibility. The ANC has corruption in every form and guise in its crosshairs for elimination. When the work of corruption-fighting agencies of this government is done, our system will be immune to corruption and every cent will be accounted for. The rationale for the current procurement regime is in its centrality in a socio-economic development. Procurement or tendering has a role in the public service because it sustains small business that create jobs and advance local economic development. A balancing act needs to be employed in engaging the procurement of goods and services between internal and external mechanisms of infrastructure development. Government has a dual role of delivering sustainable quality services for communities and to contribute to the socio-economic development of the country by involving private sector in provisioning of goods and services to government. The African National Congress, as a responsible and a caring party in government, cannot throw out a baby with the bath water, like some honorable members seem to insinuate. Through the affirmative action procurement policy, historical disadvantaged like Black people, including women and the youth, have come into economic mainstream, which wouldn't have been possible in the void that some honorable are advocating here. As for municipal-owned entities, the law makes provision for their existence and their municipalities who use their companies to deliver services. The Municipal Systems Act, Section 86B, makes provision for the following municipal entities: a private company established by one or more municipalities, in which one or more municipalities have acquired or hold interest, a service utility, a multi-jurisdictional service utility established by one or more municipalities. The law therefore provides for municipalities to own companies and main municipalities own entities which they provide services to the communities. Furthermore, Section 76 of the Municipal System Act provides that a municipality may provide services either through an internal mechanism or external mechanism. The external mechanism approach involves entering a service delivering agreement with municipal entity or other organ of state. This, as may be the case in the Constitution and in the law, municipalities are experiencing capacity and capability challenges in the efficient and effective development of infrastructure. This is exacerbated by a high lack of skilled personnel for planning, delivery, and maintenance of infrastructure. The Department of Water and Sanitation has construction units that also has capabilities to maintain infrastructure assets and also maintain minor repairs. This is timely debate that needs to be taken to its logical conclusion in the quest for exploring and exhausting all the options to eradicate infrastructure backlogs and enhance service delivery to our communities in a sustainable manner. The point of departure in this quest is to take stock of what capacities are already in existence in municipalities, national, provincial spheres of government. Other than that, the stock taking of existing utilities, these need to be fully capacitated to maximize performance. In the local government sphere of government, the entities such as MISA, which is already doing good work in support of municipalities in their quest to reserve the infrastructure backlogs, need to be capacitated to do more to help municipalities to build their own capacities. This is not the end, but the beginning of a debate to enhance infrastructure delivery to our communities without blaming the current external sourcing of goods and services in our country. As I thank you, Honorable Deputy Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Makamu. We are now calling on Honorable De Bruin to continue with the debate. Honorable De Bruin.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. With your permission, I would like to keep my camera off. I'm struggling a bit with my...
At least we see your face and we continue.
Okay, Honorable Chair, can you see me? Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Well, you said your video will be off. It's fine. Your face is visible here in the picture.
Okay, that's fine, Chair. Honorable Chair, providing sound infrastructure is crucial, not only for enhancing growth, but also for directly reducing poverty. Now, Chair, Stats SA reported in the first quarter of 2020 that approximately 1.34 million people all over South Africa were in the construction sectors. And Stats SA also reported 118 job losses between the end of June 2017 and June 2020. The COVID pandemic contributed to this. The main reason for this is that countless companies who relied on government tenders had to close their doors because of the unfairness of Black economic empowerment and in turn vastly contributing to unemployment. Agbare voorsitter, Suid-Afrika's konstruksie en ingenieurswese het die afgelope dekade groot druk ondervind, met selfs die groot genoteerde konstruksiegroepe wat in bankskap geval het weens die dalende investering in infrastruktuur en gepaardgaande instandhouding deur die regering asook die swak ekonomie. Voorsitter, vir 'n land wat werk skeld, het 'n negatiewe ekonomie onder sy eie bevolkingsgroei uitgroei, moet die sluiting van enige bedryf betreur word. Dit gebeur in 'n bedryf wat histories 'n groot belegger in kapitaalbesturing en vaardigheidsontwikkeling is. Agbare voorsitter, die gedagte van 'n staatsbeheerde konstruksiemaatskappy is nie onrealisties of vergaande nie. En 'n funksionerend, met die klem op funksionerend en daar reg oor die wêreld teen waar hierdie konsep werk en waar die lande baat uit. Maar voorsitter, Suid-Afrika is ongelukkig nie 'n funksionerende land nie. Elke departement en entiteit van die staat word bestuur en staan geblik onder korrupsie en kaderontplooiing. En staatsbeheerde konstruksiemaatskappye sal geen uitsluit nie. Dit sal 'n ideale geleentheid skep vir korrupte ANC-kaders om homself nog net meer te verryk ten koste van die land en die uitbou van Suid-Afrika. Honorable Chair, South Africa cannot afford to lose any more depth in its construction industry. Losing this capacity will take years to rebuild, and creating provincial and municipal-owned construction companies will just increase unemployment. Taking away infrastructure capacity from the private sector will just increase the excelling, qualified, experienced, well-skilled engineers, contractors, tax-paying citizens. And the problem with the construction is that the government has allowed the corrupt politicians and cadres to be civil engineering contractors overnight to obtain tenders. This will not be ranked by state-owned construction companies. These people will be shoved into positions where they are not qualified for, and they will still continue with corruption. Affirmative action and unemployment or employment are already the causes of thousands of unfilled critical positions in municipalities. So how will they cope with more departments and less staff? This will only increase the staffing profile of the executive and management positions, which are already overstaffed and underqualified and yet overpaid. And those are the people who are sucking the very life out of this country. But Honorable Chair, an open tender system, if managed correctly, can create thousands of job opportunities, but it will ensure economic growth and development. It will inspire our young entrepreneurs to join the world of business, encourage our youth to obtain qualifications in engineering, for example. But as I said, Chair, this will only happen if managed properly. the corruption regarding the tender processes are not to be blamed on the private sector. It is the corruption, ANC and the cadres that are to blame. They are the ones responsible for the thousands of unfinished projects all over South Africa. And they are responsible for the poor quality of the work being done by the unqualified companies and engineering companies. Honorable Chair, the only way to save the infrastructure is through real education, real employment, and production and self-sufficiency. Creating new state-owned companies will just enlarge the wallets of the already privileged and will only increase the poor more. The government must spend its time and energy to fight corruption, getting rid of qualified leaders in management positions in provincial departments and municipalities. We must stop race-based policies and hire the best qualified persons for the job. We must rid of BEE so that companies can compete fairly for tenders. Only then will we be in a position to save the infrastructure and to build South Africa of tomorrow that we deserve. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable De Bruin. We are now calling on Honorable MEC MCB from Mpumalanga, MEC for Kokta.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, for the opportunity. I will further request that I don't open the camera. Thank you. Let me greet you and observe all protocol as my previous presenters has done so. Honorable Chair, it gives us a pleasure to take a part in this Ocas House to make contributions towards this important topic, which is aimed at looking at the further alternatives available at us in terms of the current legislation to ensure proper service delivered to our communities. Sufficient evidence has been reviewed in most municipalities that lacked technical capacity to operate and maintain infrastructure for reliable service delivery, requires that other measures must be taken to explore other avenues for credible, reliable, and consistent service delivery through resilient infrastructure with dedicated capacity to operate and maintain it. The number of people in terms of population dynamics has been increasingly growing over the years, which has shot up the demand for consistent supply of services. This, in some instances, has not been met with requisite capacity and capability at the technical units and the bulk infrastructure to meet such demands. Municipalities with limited tax base and smaller in sizes have shown signs of distress and inability to cope with demand. Coupled with that has been their continued inability to attract suitable qualified engineers and technicians that should provide for the required technical capacity to run with projects and programs aimed for service delivery. The assessment of performance in terms of grants allocated, such as MIG, Water Service Infrastructure Grant, Regional Bulk Infrastructure Grant, the Integrated National Electrification Program, and others, are some of the allocated resources to the municipalities that have suffered some level of strained performance due to lack of requisite capacity for timely implementation. As government, with the new TDM approach, which is partly providing a solution for this and is already under implementation, is a proper indicator for the possible sharing of resources, mobilizing synergies and economies of scale where lump sum of resources may benefit more than one municipality at a go through equitable distribution of capacities and resources allocated within the district area. In this sense, the district becomes the anchor of the repository of capacity and resources that should be distributed to all local municipalities under it, especially those with less capacity, yet struggling with huge demands for continued and reliable service delivery. The legislation, Honorable Chair, to this end provides us with options to look at by going back to the drawing board to consider the feasibility and viability for the implementation of these options. Chairperson, option 1, which I will now table, is stipulated in Section 86 of the Municipal Systems Act, which reads as follows. 1, a municipality must develop and adopt a policy framework for the establishment, regulation, and management of internal municipal service district. 2, such a policy framework must reflect at least the following: the development needs and prioritize of designated parts of the municipality that must balance against that of the municipality as a whole. B, the extent of which the establishment of one or more internal municipal service district to promote with local economic development of the municipality as a whole that will contribute to enhancing the social, economic, and spatial integration of the municipality. It may not entrench or contribute to further disparities in service provision. Alternative 2, as stipulated in Section 87 of the Act, is available to us and is stipulated as follows. Establishment of multi-jurisdictional municipal services district, which 2 or more municipalities by written agreement may establish their respective municipal areas or designated parts of their respective municipal areas as a multi-jurisdictional municipal service district to facilitate the provision of a municipal service in those municipal areas or those designated parts. Surely, Honorable Chair, if we are to seriously consider measure of curbing the wastage of resources and augmentation technical capacity to deliver whilst ensuring optimal and maximum utilization of the resources to benefit poor municipalities through on the time delivered. Such options may have to be considered to structure our technical units and provide them with dedicated focus capacity through the creation of entities that will do nothing else but concentrate on the core mandate of service delivery, preferable at a district level through these multi-jurisdictional service delivery units. This will be in line with the DDM approach of creating a district delivery hub of a district-wide support with adequate capacity to withstand the various challenges. I must, however, hasten to indicate that these options as presented are available in the legislation. However, they require extensive assessment and a thorough evaluation so that it just doesn't become a one-size-fits-all. A purposive differentiated approach, Honorable Chair, may have to be adopted, which is grounded on merits and needs that may be identified for this approach to be applied. For instance, where within a district, a number of municipalities are struggling with service delivery, one central strong technical hub may have to be established at a district level in line with either Section 86 or 87 has been indicated. It must, however, be mentioned, Honorable Chair, that whatever option is to be taken, municipalities are still required to undertake a thorough assessment of their capacity, expertise, and resources to carry out their functions using internal mechanism in terms of Section 76 of the said Act, and that such options can be considered out of such assessment, which may reveal, amongst others, the bottlenecks, the gaps, and any other inherent constraint on expertise that may hinder the smooth delivery of service through existing or potential infrastructure that serves as a cornerstone for delivery of each of the total local municipalities. Having mentioned all of the above, Honorable Chair, I now would like to turn over the discussion regarding municipal-owned companies and allocation of tenders. While this may be seen to be an attractive topic to discuss, it may also reveal some of these challenges relating to the very objectives of providing services whilst promoting SMMEs, eradicating inequality, poverty, and unemployment, and ensuring that the state, as the largest carrier of expenditure, does benefit the emerging of SMMEs, communities-based organization, and eventually the community at large. We therefore must be cautious of the need for government to spend so that economic activity continues and there is equal upliftment of society through the intended resources allocated for the purpose of delivery in general. Whilst we do not support the scourge of performance failures in meeting performance, Honorable Chair, deadlines and targets, non-compliance, corruption, as well as the increasing outcry by the Auditor General and unauthorized irregular fruitless expenditure, as it may have been recorded recently through the audit outcomes of the state-owned enterprise. The creation of municipal companies should be directly at ensuring that it averts by all means these prohibited outcomes that have been recorded with other state-owned enterprise. If the creation, Honorable Chair, of municipal companies is anything to go by, it will have been established with stringent regulations which must ensure we do not attract adverse reports and negative activities that will go against very objectives of local government. While these companies may still have to observe the Municipal Management Finance Act and the supply chain regulations, which binds both accounting officers for local government and accounting authorities for municipal entities, again tight internal controls and prudent financial management are the key aspect that will help in properly managing the supply chain management environment. I therefore suggest that with much control bidding environment through SAM measures, proper monitoring and exercise of effective leadership, these matters can successfully be managed to overcome a number of challenges that we understand and are not providing any trajectory of successes that we should be proud of today. Clearly, Honorable Chair, if we establish municipal companies, this will come with precise terms of reference which gives them the mandate, powers and functions, and what they are authorized and not authorized to do. The Municipal Council will also have to observe delegation of powers in terms of the municipal companies in terms of Section 161 and 162 of the Constitution. This therefore, Honorable Chair, means whatever you have to do must follow compliance with the law, and that any other restriction that you may impose must be in line with the provision of the Constitution of 1996 and the Municipal Systems Act of 2000 and the MFMA of 2003. Chairperson, drawing you attention to the section 1101T of the MFMA. The selection of external mechanism referred to section 81 of the Municipal Act for the provision of municipal services in circumstances contemplated in section 83 of that act must be accompanied with, if a municipality decide to provide a municipal service through service delivery agreement with a person referred to section 81, it must be select the service provider through selection processes, which are competitive, fair, transparent, equitable, and cost-effective, and also allow all prospective service providers to have equally and simultaneously access to information relevant to the planning process. Also, it must minimize possibilities of fraud and corruption. In selecting a service provider, Honorable Chair, the municipality must apply the criteria listed in section 78 as well as any preference for categories of service providers referred to subsection 2 of this section. In conclusion, Honorable Chair, as indicated, going back to the drawing board, including processes of Parliament to adjust, amend our legislation when necessary, if it imposes some hindrances in bringing about the reforms necessary to bring about accelerated service delivery with fewer hurdles, it may even to be considered in the spirit of improving the quality of lives of our people. As highlighted, Honorable Chair, the current legislation does provide for the option of establishment of municipal companies or entities, either at the local district level, depending on the outcome of the assessment that may have been conducted in terms of section 76. There does exist some limitation on the total allocation of the bids terms of MFMA and the current legislative framework, especially section 217 of the Constitution. These will have to be explored further through the total packaging of the local government reforms with its enabling legislation if it was to be considered. To this end, Honorable Chair, as a democratic government, we should welcome processes that will ensure that thorough scrutiny is applied for all such necessary reforms to be taken that are appropriate. I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Msili. We are continuing with the debate, and we are now calling on Honorable ML Mama Rehane to continue with the debate. Mama Rehane.
Honorable Deputy Chairperson, as we continue to work our way out of our dark past of deliberate and institutional segregation, we need to, okay, let me start again. As we continue to work our way out of our dark past of deliberate and institutionalized segregation, we need to keep cognizant that all social partners need to work together in order to build a brighter and better South Africa, which we all envision for ourselves, our children, and their offspring. We believe infrastructure will have a significant role in achieving this brighter and better South Africa. Infrastructure development is one of the most key drivers for any economy to ensure inclusive and economic development and growth. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, infrastructure development has an impact on the economy through various demand and supply networks. Investment in technology, energy, manufacturing, transport networks, and telecommunication directly creates jobs for communities and impacts of growth of the economy. This also represents an essential input in any production of goods and services. Infrastructure development plays an important role in the development of local economies found in historically financial isolated areas such as townships, informal settlement, and rural areas. Better infrastructure development will assist these historically disadvantaged areas to access information, finance, and markets. In order for township economies to grow, there needs to be a well-coordinated and planned system that allows for a simultaneous process of bottom-up and top-down approach. The reason why this system needs to be well-coordinated is to allow local business people to connect to the broad national strategic plan and objectives, and for capital to allow to outflow to local businesses. The president, in his SONA speech of 2022, highlighted that the infrastructure development will be imperative in assisting government to achieve the goals of economic reconstruction, rehabilitation, and recovery. The SONA articulated that through creative funding and improved capabilities, government has prioritized infrastructure development. Through the infrastructure fund, the fund is predominantly focused on funding projects that focus on the energy, roads, and water management. 100 billion rand, which will be spread out from the 4 fiscals, is allocated to fund the infrastructure fund. The money was directed to the state entities to prepare them for the projects. The following are the financial plans and value of 96 billion rand in student accommodation, social housing, telecommunication, water, sanitation, and transport. The first edition of projects with a value of 21 billion rand were expected to commence this year. Of this, 2.6 billion rand comes from the government and 18.4 billion comes from the private sector. Government has made an initial investment worth 1.8 billion rand in bulk infrastructure, which has unlocked 7 private sectors projects to the value of 133 billion rand. For many South Africans in townships, informal settlements, and rural areas, these projects have started to provide jobs as well as access to better roads, markets, and social services. Government has further gone to make sure we establish the Wiliziwe Rural Bridges Program, which is dedicated to deliver more bridges to society. Infrastructure, Honorable Deputy Chairperson, development in fundamentals element that even the ANC General 8 of 2022 statement highlighted. In the General 8 statement, we said we must mobilize social partners to urgently finalize a social compact to reduce unemployment, poverty, and inequality in our country. All municipalities working with the parameters of the district development model must develop clear local economic development plans that focus on competitive advantage and different regions of our country in sectors such as mining, tourism, agriculture, manufacturing, and agro-processing. We have made a clarion call to all ANC members and society that they need to activity campaign against local forums that hold infrastructure and development projects to ransom for tender and jobs. Local employment and business setups must be coordinated by local government in partnership with the community structures and civil society to ensure that a fair and just distribution of possible employment opportunities and business opportunities. As an organization, we now more than ever dedicated to continue with the important sectoral work and projects that ensure that the motive forces of change are organized and mobilized to take part in the transformation agenda to attain objectives set out in the National Development Plan. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, the scrapping of tenders should not be the route we take as a country, especially in the infrastructure sector. The state at this current moment does not have the capacity for building all mega infrastructure projects in various sectors, which vastly differs. The partnership between the public sector and private sector remains one of the cooperation, as we have seen in recent times, how the private sector and the investment and infrastructure department in the presidency are working together. In 2021, the investment and infrastructure department in the presidency outlined the sustainable infrastructure development system symposium. The aim of this SIDSSA was to ensure quality infrastructure for development, recovery, and inclusive growth through seven parts. These 7 parts are integrated human settlement, new ways of investing, accelerating investment into South African student housing infrastructure program, municipal infrastructure financing, bulk funding solution, digital economy, the third great economic revolution, deep dive parallel sessions such as the green economy, with South Africa being as the forefront for green energy and industrialization through the revitalization of the manufacturing sector and unveiling of the infrastructure fund process. As a governing party, we comprehend, acknowledge, appreciate the fact that the tender system is not immune from corruption in the procurement processes and procedures, as well as the adequate distribution of the resources and money once the tender has been awarded. We do not advocate for the complete scrapping of the tender system in the infrastructure sector. What we are calling for is better consequences management, intensification in the removal of cost employees, implementation of disciplinary committees, decreasing fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and better implementation of policy. We call upon law enforcement agencies to intensify their investigation abilities, methods, and we encourage them to bring anyone is found to be corrupt to book. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, we reiterate our position that infrastructure development remains a key driver of economic growth, as it entails manufacturing and industrial growth through the increased spending in infrastructure, which produces increases in aggregate demand and subsequently a growth and development of the economy. As government continues with its infrastructure development projects, which are well captured in the investment and infrastructure department in the presidency, its plans, roads, telecommunication, railroads, irrigation, water supply, sanitation, ports, airports, warehousing facilities, and power supply will play a vital role. The rate of change in terms of change in the infrastructure and construction sector has not yet been rapid as in some sectors, but government understands that in order for us to revitalize our industrialization, manufacturing, and local economies, infrastructure development needs to be at that heart of the revitalization. Government commits it to making sure that the change is ever made and hope that the change will be significant, sustainable, and unstoppable. It should be clear that the EFF position on creating provincial and local government construction companies through the scrapping of tenders is without foundation. If we seriously want infrastructure development, then the EFF proposal is not the development path to follow, as it is a blind alley which will not lead to local economic development, job creation, and transformation. The ANC's path of infrastructure development through private and public partnership is geared to reversing the effects of poverty, inequality, unemployment, historically economic inclusion. Thank you, Chairperson. I'm finished, Chairperson. Deputy Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mama Rehane. We will now call on Honorable T.A. Summers, Western Cape MEC for Infrastructure, Honorable Summers.
Thank you, Honorable House Deputy Chairperson, fellow MECs who are in the infrastructure cluster, making changes to our people's lives. A tangible change, I must say. Honorable members of the NCOP, the SALGA representative alluded to earlier in this meeting, but also the citizens of South Africa, following this very interesting topic for debate. It is said that there are 2.6 million micro, small, and medium enterprises or SMEs in South Africa, and many of them
I'm sorry,
are
Honorable
are
Summers.
either
One
construction.
moment, please. Can you just give me a moment? Honorable Mdaka,
No problem.
I saw you raise your hand. It is for someone, Honorable Mdaka, you raise your hand now. Is there any area or anything that you want me to attend to? If not,
No,
you can
it's
continue.
just, sorry, Honorable Chair, it's just the gadget. It's just the gadget. I was just clapping hands and I pressed the wrong button. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Honorable Summers.
It's
may
a user
continue.
error, Chair, not a systems
You may
error.
continue. Honorable Nont,
Thank you.
Gisali Slakre
Thank
is
you.
Gistel Blaney. Honorable Summers.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson. It is said that there are 2.6 million micro, small, and medium enterprises, or SMEs as we commonly call it in South Africa, many of whom are construction companies. And that is a significant figure, since our national unemployment rate, as was announced today for the third quarter, is at 32.9%, 1% less than the previous quarter. But what stood out as part of today's announcement was that the construction sector created 46,000 jobs, which is amongst the highest contributors for the quarter under review. These results, however, alarmingly indicate to us that our youth remain vulnerable in the labor market, an employment rate of 45.5%. But how does that fit into the infrastructure discussion of today? Honorable Deputy Chair, and this I find very ironic about this debate, yet we are busy seeking to debate the abolishment of a key enabler in the economic emancipation of our youth as entrepreneurs in the infrastructure sector, or possibly for our youth who are job seekers in the infrastructure sector. We have just come out of the Zondo Commission and its findings. In its 3 years of proceedings, a glaring picture of the highest levels of corruption was shown to us and the rest of the world. Sad indeed. To date, we have not seen any tangible prosecutorial convictions being made, thus highlighting the lack of accountability that exists in our SOEs and the national state level. It's not our policies, it's not our frameworks, our regulations. It has to do with human behavior, even in the supply chain processes at that level. It is this cultural behavior that has seen our country mount up enormous debts with no end, and future generations, even at the expense of future infrastructure, having to suffer because of that. Therefore, it is quite clear, Honorable Deputy Chairperson, for everyone to see that creating state-owned construction companies is utterly ridiculous. It does not even fit into the framework of what our country needs going into the future. In a country where only 16% of the 257 municipalities were given a clean audit, and the majority of them in the Western Cape, it is clear for us to see that where these clean audits were given, supply chain regulations were followed, supply chain processes were followed, fair bidding processes were allowed to ensure opportunities for all the people who were part of that process. And yet, the antithesis of that, in the other 84% of local government, we see a total regression in financial management, of which supply chain processes, including tender processes, are sadly part of that. This is clearly another attempt by a party that sees itself as a ruling party. It has no governance experience to try thus and stifle funds from hardworking citizens and enrich the elite few, while the rest are left as paupers, by even proposing this to us to debate today, Honorable Chair. Yes, the party who have tabled this have no governance experience, and it's clear for all to see through today, and I hope that the citizens of our country take note of this. At the start of this dispensation, South Africans were baited on a promise of living a better and or dignified life. One that will see them have access to water and electricity, core components of infrastructure for any community. However, Deputy Chairperson, the reality has now kicked in 28 years later for us. And I'll use practical examples. Just for this current calendar year, 2022, we have had no less than 2,881 hours of load shedding nationally. That is a loss of 120 days, or a third of this year have been gone. Wherever we look at the key indicators of infrastructure to expand the quality of people's lives across this country, where we see dysfunctional infrastructure, once again, not by processes, not by regulations, but by poor governance and oversight over this governance across our country, we have seen the debilitating and regression of our infrastructure. So our citizens are really experiencing the opposite of what was promised to them 28 years ago. This is clearly not a better life for all of our citizens in our country. But as the Western Cape government, we pride ourselves in being a government that is citizen-centric and innovative. And you can see this through our infrastructure departments. Human settlements and the Department of Transport and Public Works together have spent close to 99% of their budget to ensure the emancipation and empowerment of SMMEs, yes, but also to ensure that our infrastructure, it creates a quality of life which our people, not only in this province, which deserves, but also shows to the rest of the country it is possible. We have a competent state that respects the rule of law, that respects the supply chain processes, that ensures opportunities are given in a fair and transparent manner to qualifying entities which seek to do business with us as a provincial government. But let's look towards the future. So in the Western Cape, instead of us waiting for the national government to one day miraculously wake up and provide a solution to eradicate the infrastructure backlog, we are actually doing something about that now as we speak, honorable members of this House. Through my Department of Infrastructure, we have started working on an infrastructure vision and strategy, starting with a clear framework that will inform our plan and vision. But this plan and vision ensures that the private sector and our citizens are part of our journey of infrastructure change in a sustainable way into the future. Many of you might ask, what am I talking about? What is this infrastructure plan of the Western Cape? Our framework, honorable members, looks at creating an infrastructure stakeholder engagement and partnership model, the opposite of what is being proposed here this evening. And this framework or model entails the following. Firstly, it seeks to coordinate planning and implementation across the three spheres of government in terms of infrastructure, but the private sector and the broader citizenry participating in all our processes. Secondly, it is aligned to the Western Cape government's Growth for Jobs strategic framework to ensure that infrastructure enables inclusive economic growth to create jobs for our citizens across the Western Cape. An infrastructure department and policies and tenders does play a huge role in that. Therefore, honorable members, the Western Cape government, through the Department of Infrastructure as the lead department, will provide an enabling environment, not only just for certain types of infrastructure, but including energy infrastructure, which is failing us dismally as we speak. Our energy infrastructure guidelines will strategically position energy infrastructure in the Western Cape to ensure we unlock the job opportunities which our people rightfully deserve across our province. It will also ensure that there is a unified approach to energy infrastructure between all role players in our province, both from a strategic content point of view and from a coordinated effort to achieve impactful results. This is future thinking. This is a government that governs in the interest of all of its people. But once again, the antithesis of this is happening at the moment. So I'm now turning to another poor performing SOE. That is called SANRAIL. Earlier this month, honorable members of the House, we learned that SANRAIL awarded a 6.6 billion rand tender to a Chinese-led joint venture. With 4 out of the 5 tenders going to these JVs, surely this will have a negative impact on an already ailing economy and the sector as a whole. This is once again a reminder of the little regard our national government and its SOEs have for our citizens. So, in conclusion, Honorable Deputy Chairperson, the question that we need to ask for ourselves this evening, pertaining to this debate matter, is this proposal not just another attempt that will capture the state and further bleed its organs dry? But this, ironically, is from a party whose policies are based not in reality, but in an ideology that is a proven failure wherever it has been implemented. And last but not least, from a party that does not govern. It's easy to bring proposals that does not work, but you must govern to ensure that it works. And in the Western Cape, the DA-led Western Cape, I must add, we have proven through innovation, accountability, and having an administration that is focused on the citizens. It can be done. And we are doing it. And moving into the future, we'll continue doing it. So it's time that we debunk all these ludicrous proposals on the table and start holding our public service more accountable. But ultimately, in terms of infrastructure, ensure that we would do so and work together with the private sector, together to unlock not only job opportunities, but create health infrastructure into the future that will unlock for future generations opportunities which sadly, over the last 28 years, have gone amiss. But in the Western Cape, we have proven it's possible to do anything if you stay focused and law-abiding. Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable MEC Sims. We are continuing with the debate and we are calling on the Honorable N. Hadebe to continue with the debate. Honorable Hadebe.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Chairperson. The inflation of invoices and irregular payments made to service providers, as well as fraudulent overbilling by subcontractors for repair and maintenance that is never done, are things that South African citizens have become accustomed to hearing, as the media frequently reports on the prevalence of tender fraud in the country. In 2021, the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure stated that South Africa had been left littered with unfinished projects because the construction sector was one of the most corrupt in the country. Sadly, various state-owned enterprises have been linked to issues of fraud and corruption, which directly impacts the lives of South African citizens. Earlier this year, the Minister of Finance told the National Assembly that more than 308 billion had been used to bail out failing state-owned enterprises, leading to a reduction of 257 billion in public funds available for frontline services and infrastructure. Furthermore, the minister announced that somewhere between 126 billion and 260 billion of Eskom's on-balance sheet debt will be transferred from the entity's balance sheet onto the national balance sheet. As justification, the government argued that Eskom must be rescued, or else our lights will go out permanently. At the 2021 Sustainable Infrastructure Development Symposium for South Africa, the president stated that even if the government spends all it can on infrastructure development, the backlog remains so immense that it would take billions of rands and decades more to fill it without a contribution from the private sector. Arguably, the proposal for the creation of provincial and municipal-owned construction companies is exactly what the country needs. Provincial and local government is best situated to determine the infrastructural needs that exist in their areas, which means that all pending infrastructure projects will be prioritized in accordance to their respective agencies, and not the total amount of kickbacks that can be derived from the projects. However, the proposal for the creation of these construction companies needs to be approached with caution. We cannot simply ignore the fact that the misappropriation of provincial and municipal funds is a reality across various provinces in our country. Therefore, we need to first address the lack of accountability and consequence management regarding finances at both provincial and local levels before we embark on decentralizing construction projects. I thank you, Honorable Deputy Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Adebe. We are continuing with the debate, and we now call on the Honorable J.J. Lond to continue with the debate.
Goeienaand, agbare ondervoorsitter, and good afternoon, members. I would have greeted ministers and deputy ministers, but they are not here. Colleagues, the single biggest crisis facing us as South Africans is the unacceptably high unemployment figures. With the quarterly labour force survey, the third one for 22, released today, the number of unemployed people, and that includes the 3.5 million discouraged job seekers, now stands at 11.2 million. There is a real concern and worry that colleagues in the ANC do not fully comprehend what this means. It is easy to say 11.2 million, but in real terms, it equates to every single person in Johannesburg, Pretoria, and Durban living without a job. It is more than the entire population of Limpopo and Northwest together. The first example of how the ANC, they just do not care about South Africans is that not a single member of the bloated cabinet is here to participate. And we pointed this out in the previous debate as well, and there's members from the ANC that try to defend it. But this cabinet takes, what's the word you use? Collective responsibility. Yet you disregard opposition party sponsored debates where not a single member feigned to attend. You could not find the time in your diary. Honourable members from the ANC, you might not like the fact that the opposition calls you out and put forward ideas. But that's part of democracy. And you are supposed to respect our constitution and the citizens of this country, something you don't do if we look at your actions. Honourable Ghai, the district development model will not work. It is just another example of the ANC moving the goalpost, another catchphrase that you are forced to bring into your speeches. But when it comes to actual delivery, we get nothing from you apart from tender scandals. And then you say tender fraud and corruption will be defeated by the ANC. Honourable Ghai, you are a decent human being. So when you say this, you must surely cringe in your heart defending the indefensible. Honourable Mamaragane, I recently read a report that 80% of kids in Limpopo cannot read for comprehension. That thought stuck in my head throughout your speech. Honourable Nkopane, you come from the province of scooter ambulances, proudly delivered by the ANC. Throughout your speech, that image popped up as a symbol of the respect you show voters, the voters that you are supposed to represent. Honourable Mukose, sorry, if there was proof that you as the EFF and the ANC are in the same WhatsApp group, it is your infatuation with Russia and how they do things. That is then also a clear warning that giving the EFF power, they wouldn't think twice to trample on the human rights of those people within their own country or their neighbours. There's one thing we can, however, agree with the EFF, the Freedom Front, and the IFP, and that is that the ANC will be removed from power come 2024. The real question is, why would the EFF sponsor such a debate when they know, as Honourable Ryder pointed it out, that multiple SOEs have failed and continue to fail? Maybe it has to do with the following, and I quote from Daily Maverick. All in all, VBS managers and auditors and business people, as well as ANC politicians and EFF leaders, stole more than 2.7 billion from the bank. These people stole the money and the future of vulnerable people
who
who
has
trusted.
been charged from the EFF?
These people from the
EFF
EFF stole the money and the future of vulnerable people who trusted in
And old
VBS and mutual
mutual.
banks.
And old
They
mutual.
stole the education of young people, the pension of the old, and the lifeline of the poor. We cannot risk another VBS. We need to let the experts be experts. As Honourable Minister Simmers indicated, we need to partner with the private sector. We do not need to partner with the Chinese. They are not the enemy of South Africans, the private sector. In fact, they employ most South Africans. The enemy is dressed in the yellow, green, and black that has stolen billions that were meant for the poor. And as you can see above, those wearing red over Gucci, Fabiani, and Louis Vuitton. Honourable members, agbare ondervoorsitter, I really like the ending of Honourable Ryder's speech, and I want to honour that ending and give you an adapted Mark Twain quote. applicable to today's debate. Sometimes I wonder whether the EFF is being run by smart people who are putting us on, or by imbeciles who really mean it. Thank you.
Honorable Lon, thank you. Honorable Dangor.
Chairperson, if you don't mind, if I can speak from here. Thank you
It
very
cannot be a
much.
problem. You may continue.
Thank you very
Yes,
much,
it cannot be a problem. You may continue.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, infrastructure represents the engine, or rather the wheels of the economic activity in three complementary ways. To state the obvious first, adequate, reliable infrastructure is the key factor in the ability of countries to compete in international trade and markets. For example, reliable transport networks enable a country to export commodities and finished products in addition to importing household goods and businesses. On the other hand, infrastructure not only is for direct consumption, but also for raising productivity and diversifying the production. For example, higher water quality and the availability of electricity are necessary to shift production from raw agricultural and mineral commodities to processed foods and goods. More importantly, infrastructure has a positive impact on improving the quality of life and reducing poverty. Consider the following illustrative examples. Access to clean water and sanitation reduces mortality and morbidity rates among the poor, while access to effective public transport is a key factor in the ability of the poor to obtain employment. The upshot is that the investment in infrastructure is significantly correlated with the economic growth and inclusive development. Ironically, what is evident in South Africa is that infrastructure has weak links with economic growth and inclusive development because of three obstacles standing in the way of infrastructure's high potential payoffs in terms of economic growth and inclusive development. The first obstacle is that the high ratio of public debt to GDP has often led to disproportionate cutbacks in infrastructure investment, thereby undermining the infrastructure's impetus to economic growth and inclusive development. The second obstacle is that disproportionate cutbacks in infrastructure investment have resulted in massive backlogs in infrastructure development and maintenance, thus leading to the failure of infrastructure to meet the economic growth and inclusive development goals. The third obstacle is that, according to the economic freedom fighters, the tendering system that the government uses to supply infrastructure to meet the demands of all households and businesses and other users deters the potential payoffs of infrastructure because it proliferates rent creation that benefits only a narrow interest at the expense of public interest. And this leaves negative effects for the society. As a result, it is the third obstacle that the EFF makes a compelling argument that the ANC government should set up state-owned economic companies in the construction industry across different provinces, municipalities, instead of relying on the private sector to address the massive backlogs in infrastructure development and maintenance. The underlying effect of the EFF's argument is that the ANC-led government has not gained significant foothold in the construction industry, which is economically more resilient than other industries, while containing elements of truth. The EFF's argument is hazy, flawed, and unrealistic for several reasons. Firstly, provinces and municipalities do not have the same effective demand for infrastructure, to be sure. The population density, economic and development needs, for example, differ widely across provinces and municipalities, and therefore, no socioeconomic case for setting up state-owned companies in the construction industry and provinces with a lower demand for infrastructure coverage to achieve the desired economic growth and inclusive development goals. Secondly, setting up state-owned companies in the construction industry, which is inherently complex, and recruiting professional staff to oversee them are a lengthy process. And given that provinces and municipalities face the capacity constraints, that state-owned companies are undesirable, if not a bad starting point. Thirdly, a large portfolio of state-owned companies causes much certainty and a general sense, a lack of strategic focus, thereby overlapping mandates between state-owned companies. For example, the proliferation of state-owned companies in the construction industry across provinces and municipalities to expand road coverage and clear massive backlogs in the road maintenance runs the risk of making the central role less clear, and the SOE is designated for development management and maintenance of the country's network. Finally, the ANC-led government is facing fiscal constraints, leading in some instances to undercapitalization, which differs SOE's ability to improve the existing weak links between the infrastructure and economic growth. Fundamentalism, the bottom line is that the EFF state fundamentalism is not well placed to clear massive backlogs in infrastructure and development, maintenance in the country, embarking, and therefore tomorrow would barely generate the economic growth and inclusive development. On the contrary, the ANC-led government remains committed to a mixed economy approach, the construction industry to build up the country's potential and raise economic growth to expand inclusive development, because recent experiences reveal that serious challenges regarding the blunt instruments of public ownerships and the financing to meet infrastructure development and maintenance demands. This presupposes that the setting up of state-owned companies in the construction industry across different provinces and municipalities does not demonstrate any advantage in eradicating massive backlogs in infrastructure and maintenance for numerous reasons. To begin with, the construction and maintenance infrastructure, especially in electricity, water, ports, and road, require sophisticated technologies and skills and equipment, and are in short supply at the moment. Finally, and in conclusion, Chairperson, let us say that the model that is being pursued now of a mixed economy, of getting both sides and getting all the stakeholders as partners to move South Africa forward, to build a better South Africa, and also to build a better Africa, and to build a better world, so we can build the infrastructure that can reach into Africa, the infrastructure that can actually serve our export needs. With that, I thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dangor. We will now call on the party whip of the Economic Freedom Fighters.
And why is everybody clapping?
Honorable Mokause.
Clapping for what?
Honorable Mokause, order. Can you respond to the debate? You have initiated the debate, so you must respect those that you were hosting. Can you continue to conclude the debate, please?
Chairperson, in closing, it is clear that the creation of provincial and municipal owned construction companies will contribute positively to the eradication of infrastructure backlog in South Africa. Although you are denying it, throughout its 9 years of formation, the EFF has been clear on the stance of ownership, control, and redistribution of the economy for the benefit of all South African, irrespective of color and race. Infrastructure and economic development and sustainability depends on availability of funds and the ability to use it effectively, which requires good financial management, which we do not see with the sitting government. The deliberate failings of state-owned companies in the recent past has led many to question whether the state should hold on to this, with suggestions made that this should be privatized. And today in this council, we have heard how privatization is justified based on the belief that only private ownership and tenders can guarantee high efficiency. Chairperson, however, in our view, as the mighty economic freedom fighters, the question has never been whether state-owned companies should exist or not. We have always advocated for the creation of a well-functioning state-owned companies and for the abolishment of tenders. This system has failed dismally. What is needed, Chairperson, is leadership which shall ensure that this exists structures of accountability and oversight. And we shall provide that after the general elections of 2024, when we take over government. We have demonstrated that over the years, some people even seated here, they do not know if tomorrow they will be governing some metros or not. So undermine us at your own peril. Chairperson, for there are other factors that contribute to the failures of state-owned companies, and this include the management teams that are appointed, the skill set of their boards, and the set of the relationship between their boards appointed and the tender system in place. If missions are clearly defined and periodically evaluated, many of these challenges will not exist to the extent that they currently do. Chair, there ought to be constant monitoring and evaluation of these entities with a focus on the manner of their operation, how they deploy capital and their development effectively. Chairperson, we would like to place it on record that the Economic Freedom Fighters is ready to govern. We introduce such topics in this council to highlight the fact that our policies will relieve South Africans from poverty. And today we have demonstrated how the tender system does not work. It is manipulated, populated with corruption, filled and has collapsed the state as a whole. The state must employ its own engineers, quality surveyors and builders for sustainable tasks. Their responsibilities will include the construction of much-awaited houses, roads, bridges, sports facilities, sewage system, with the goal of building capable state. Some of you will choose not to listen to this because you live in suburbs where there's houses, where there's proper sanitation, where there's proper water infrastructure, while some of us still lives in squalors and continue to struggle with water and sanitation. We will at some point propose that we exchange Honorable Dango for a moment, for a day or two with them. They know themselves, to come and live where we live and see if they will survive. I can tell you they will never even survive for an hour. So we're not expecting much from them. With the provincial and municipal companies, our people will have decent homes, Black people in particular, and flushing toilets, which will restore the Black dignity. And let me tell you, the only organization which will do that, which can restore the dignity of a Black child, is the economic freedom fighters. Houses which will be built closer to schools and areas where our people work. Not a segregated arrangement that we are seeing. From apartheid to democracy, we are still segregated. Black people are meant to live across the railway line, across the highway, so that when they cross that road or the highway, they die. And you think we can come here and listen to you? You've got zero interest of a Black life. Black life doesn't matter to you. Our people will travel on decent roads and bridges, which will not collapse at the face of a minor natural disaster chair. We must establish construction companies which will employ our people in their numbers and provide for much needed support for developing a national economy, national and stable economy. We must establish mining companies where our people will benefit from minerals resources, which are beneath the land which was stolen from them by settlers who comes here today and have a loud mouth about how Black people must live. We want the same life with the same great infrastructure that you are having. And we are going to continue to advocate for that. We are not surprised by the input that you made here as the DA, because these construction companies are dominated by white people with absolutely no experience, employed foremen with no experience and qualification, having to supervise a Black person, highly qualified Black person, and you still cannot transfer skills in this democratic South Africa. This shows how selfish you are, how selfish your government is.
Thank you very much,
doing it
Honorable
here in the
Makase.
Western Cape, but we are going to prevent you to spread in South Africa. We are going to show you that we'll take over and will restore the dignity of a Black child. Thank you, Deputy Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Makase. Honorable members, that concludes the debate. I would like to thank the MECs, the SALGA representatives, all permanent and special delegates for availing themselves for the debate. Before we conclude the House or in the business of the day, let me just request members to stay on the platform and in the chamber for the meeting that will take place immediately after we have adjourned the House. That concludes the business of the day. The House is adjourned. It's over to you, Chairperson, honorable members.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.